If I stay convinced that I've already tried everything, nothing works for me, I'm broken in some special way, then I will never get better. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Starve the Demon, Recovery by Any Means Necessary. If you're new here, I'm Jenna. Around here, we talk real recovery, real experience, and real solutions. No sugarcoating, just truth and hope you can actually use. Today, we're diving into step 2 from the Narcotics Anonymous program. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. If you have your basic text and it works how and why, keep them close because we're going to read from both. Step 1 says, I can't do this on my own. Step 2 says, maybe I don't have to. We're not being asked to believe anything yet. We're not being asked to define God, join a religion, or pretend to have faith. Step 2 is simply about being open to the possibility that something bigger than your addiction might help you. That something can be the group, the program, the collective experience of other recovering addicts, your future self who wants to live, or a spiritual power defined by you, not by someone else. In step 1, the spiritual principle was honesty. Here, the spiritual principle is hope. So we're going to start reading in the basic text. This is in chapter 4, page 23. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The second step is necessary if we expect to achieve ongoing recovery, because we practice these principles in all our affairs. The first step leaves us with a need to believe in something that can help us with our powerlessness, uselessness, and helplessness. The first step has left a vacuum in our lives. We need to find something to fill that void. This is the purpose of the second step. What that means is that the purpose of the second step is to fill the void that was left in step 1 when we surrendered our addiction. Some of us didn't take this step seriously at first. We passed over it with a minimum of concern, only to find the next steps would not work until we worked step 2. Even when we admitted that we needed help with our drug problem, many of us would not admit to the need for faith or sanity. Oh, I need help, but I don't need to have faith in anything. I wasn't insane. That's insanity in and of itself. We have a disease, progressive, incurable, and fatal. What does that mean? It never gets better. There is no cure for it, and it will eventually kill you. One way or another, we went out and bought our destruction on the time payment plan. Suicide on the installment plan? Ever heard that? All of us, from the junkie snatching purses to the sweet little old lady hitting 2 or 3 doctors for legal prescriptions, have one thing in common. We seek our destruction a bag at a time, a few pills at a time, or a bottle at a time until we die. This is at least part of the insanity of addiction. The price may seem higher for the addict who prostitutes for a fix than it is for the addict who merely lies to a doctor. Ultimately, both pay for their disease with their lives. Insanity is repeating the same mistakes and expecting different results. Many of us realize when we get to the program that we have gone back time and again to using, even though we knew that we were destroying our lives. Insanity is using drugs day after day, knowing that only physical and mental destruction comes when we use. The most obvious insanity of the disease of addiction is the obsession to use drugs. A good assignment right here is to list the insanity of your addiction. List the behaviors that were insane. And if you think you don't have any, the very idea that you are buying, selling, possessing, using drugs is in and of itself insane behavior. That you would risk jail, that you would risk death is insanity. That you would not pay your bills because you had to pay the dope man. That's insane. That you would drive under the influence is insane. That you would not be present for your children or your spouse or your other loved ones or your job. That's insane. That you cannot be a responsible, fully functioning adult because you have this mental obsession that this addiction is running you. That's insane. So I bet if you sit and you think about it, you can find the ways that you behaved that were insane. Ask yourself this question. Do I believe it would be insane to walk up to someone and say, "May I please have a heart attack or a fatal accident?" If you can agree that this would be an insane thing, you should have no problem with the second step. Any story you tell about how you got passed out and you drank so much and you were at the party and you drank and you drove and you lost this boyfriend and, anything that starts with "hold my beer," put that on your list of insane behavior if you're questioning whether or not you were acting insane and need to be restored to sanity. In this program, the first thing we do is stop using drugs. At this point, we begin to feel the pain of living without drugs or anything to replace them. The pain forces us to seek a power greater than ourselves that can relieve our obsession to use. The process of coming to believe is similar for most addicts. Most of us lacked a working relationship with a higher power. We begin to develop this relationship by simply admitting to the possibility of a power greater than ourselves. Most of us have no trouble admitting that addiction had become a destructive force in our lives. Our best efforts resulted in ever greater destruction and despair. At some point, we realized that we needed the help of some power greater than our addiction. Our understanding of a higher power is up to us. No one is going to decide for us. We can call it the group, the program, or we can call it God. The only suggested guidelines are that this power be loving, caring, and greater than ourselves. We don't have to be religious to accept this idea. The point is that we open our minds to believe, and that is the action attached to this step. Every step has a promise, a spiritual principle, and an action. Step 2, the promise is that you will be restored to sanity. The spiritual principle is hope, and the action is coming to believe. We may have difficulty with this, but by keeping an open mind, sooner or later, we find the help we need. We talked and listened to others. We saw other people recovering, and they told us what was working for them. We began to see evidence of some power that could not fully be explained. Confronted with this evidence, we began to accept the existence of a power greater than ourselves. We can use this power long before we understand it. As we see coincidences and miracles happening in our lives, acceptance becomes trust. We grow to feel comfortable with our higher power as a source of strength. As we learn to trust this power, we begin to overcome our fear of life. The process of coming to believe restores us to sanity. The strength to move into action comes from this belief. We need to accept this step to start on the road to recovery. When our belief has grown, we are ready for step 3. See, it's very short, which is why I also pull out the "it works how and why," because I feel like it describes it in greater detail. Something I want to say about this. Nobody comes into recovery full of belief. We come in beat up, tired, angry, scared, unsure of anything. Hope simply says, maybe there's another way. But hope requires open-mindedness, not being convinced, not being enthusiastic, just being willing to stop saying no for 5 minutes. If I stay convinced that I've already tried everything, nothing works for me, I'm broken in some special way, then I will never get better. So step 2 asks, are you willing to consider the possibility that you are not the final authority on your own life? Something to think about. So I'm going to read from "It Works How and Why," and then we're going to talk about belief. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore sanity. Now, this is on page 17 of "It Works How and Why." Our surrender in the first step leaves us with a deep need to believe that we can recover. This surrender makes it possible for us to feel hope. By admitting our own powerlessness, we open our minds to an entirely new idea. The possibility that something greater than ourselves might be powerful enough to relieve our obsession to use drugs. It is quite likely that before coming to NA, we never believed in any power but our own willpower, and that has failed us. NA introduces us to a new understanding. We draw hope from this understanding and begin to comprehend what it means to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. We find additional hope by listening to other recovering addicts. We can relate to where they've been and draw hope from who they've become. We listen closely at meetings and become willing to apply what we hear to our own lives. As we begin to believe that there is hope for us, we also begin to trust the process of recovery. I just want to shout out to Miss Pizzetta for my last rehab because she used to say to me all the time, you got to trust the process. And she was right. Our white booklet states, there is one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. This is an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards spiritual principles. 3 of these that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. This doesn't mean we must be unfailingly honest, open-minded, and willing. We just have to try the best we can to practice these principles. As we first approach step 2, we can practice the principle of honesty by acknowledging and sharing what we do or don't believe about a power greater than ourselves. Now, this is a great assignment. This is something my sponsor had me do in the very beginning. Write down a list of what my higher power is and what my higher power isn't. What can it do? What can't it do? So that I have a concrete idea what I'm thinking of when I think of my higher power. Not some, just abstract concept, but a concrete, this is what it can do, this is what it can't do, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. Developing our open-mindedness requires some effort, but we can practice this principle by listening to other recovering addicts share how they came to believe. For many of us, the willingness to try something new came about simply because we were so tired of our old ways. It seemed to us that because our own power wasn't sufficient to restore our sanity, perhaps something else could, if we let it. That's another good assignment. Talk to recovered addicts. Ask them, what is your concept of a higher power? How do you apply that into your life and your recovery? And see what their answer is. Also, in the back of the NA Basic text, you have the stories. A lot of those stories are exactly that. They talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And a lot of that is about how people came to define their higher power, how that higher power helped restore them to sanity, and how they eventually came to the spiritual experience that is really the key to it all. Many of us felt that insanity was too harsh a word to describe our condition. However, if we take a realistic look at our active addiction, we'll see that we have been anything but sane. For the most part, our perceptions were not based on reality. We viewed the world around us as a hostile environment. Some of us withdrew physically and had little, if any, contact with anyone. Some of us went through the motions of life, but allowed nothing to touch us emotionally. Either way, we ended up feeling isolated. Despite evidence to the contrary, we felt that we were in control. That is the definition of delusion. Belief in something despite evidence to the contrary. We ignored or didn't believe the truths that were staring us in the face. We continued to do the same things and expected the results to be different. Worst of all was the fact that we continued to use drugs regardless of the negative consequences we experienced. Despite the warning signs of our drug use was out of control, we continued trying to justify it. Listen, I stayed going to jail, stayed getting in trouble, still getting high. God was getting high in prison. That's insanity. I could tell you all kinds of war stories. And they're funny, right? Except that they're not. Because basically I was suicide on the installment plan. All too often, the result was that we could no longer face ourselves. When we take a realistic look at our lives, there can be no doubt that we desperately need a restoration to sanity. Regardless of our individual interpretation of the term restoration, most of us agree that, for us, it means changing to a point where addiction and its accompanying insanity are not controlling our lives. Because this whole time that you think you're in control, you're not in control. Your addiction's in control. And then, if you can get it together, your higher power can be in control. But this idea that you're in control, Lord help me if I'm in control of it, because I'm going to run it off a bridge. Individually, we experience it differently at varying stages of our recovery, but we all can see some results of this progress right from the beginning of our recovery. Initially, being restored to sanity means that we no longer have to use drugs. We go to meetings rather than isolating. We call our sponsor rather than sitting alone with painful feelings. We ask for our sponsor's guidance in working the steps, a real demonstration of sanity. We begin to believe that a powerful force can restore us to sanity. At long last, we feel hope for ourselves. Because I tell you, my last emotion was fear. I was hopeless. We came to believe implies a process. For some, this process is simple, and it may bring immediate results. Many of us arrived in NA so completely defeated that we were willing to try anything. We call that the gift of desperation. Seeking help from a power greater than ourselves may have been the best idea we had ever heard. However, the process of coming to believe can be difficult, even painful. Many of us have found that acting as if we believe is helpful. This does not mean we should be dishonest. Rather, it means that if we have doubts, we practice the program as if we believe we can be restored to sanity. Fake it till you make it. Act your way into better thinking. Don't try to think your way into better action. It is okay to say, I don't get it. I don't even believe it, but I'm going to do it anyway. That is being honest about it. You're allowed to feel that way. We all felt that way. Everybody understands if you say, listen, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know why it's going to work, but I'm going to go ahead and do this thing that my sponsor told me I should do. And then kick back and see if it doesn't work. Trust the process. Belief in a power greater than ourselves does not come easily to all of us. However, we have found an open mind indispensable when we approach this step. If we look around us, we find many reasons to believe. Our belief may simply be that we can recover from a life of active addiction. The freedom from the obsession to use may be our first experience of a power greater than ourselves at work in our lives. Perhaps for the first time in many years, our obsession with drugs no longer controls our every waking moment. Knowing that we don't have to use today is a powerful belief in and of itself. We start to develop faith through the process of coming to believe. It starts with hope. For some of us, this may be only a faint spark at first, perhaps just the thought that maybe if we work this program, our lives will get better. Our hope turns to faith as our lives begin to improve. For many of us, faith can be described as a belief in something intangible. After all, who can logically explain the sudden lifting of an obsession to use drugs? Yet this has happened for many of us. With our hope for a different life and the beginnings of our faith that recovery is possible, we start the process of coming to believe in a power greater than ourselves. We come from various walks of life and experience, so it is natural that we bring with us differing concepts of spirituality. In NA, no one is forced to believe any set ideas. Each one of us can believe in anything in which we want to believe. This is a spiritual program, not a religion. Individually, we cultivate our own beliefs about a power greater than we are. No matter what we understand this power to be, help is available to all of us. We don't care. I don't care if you use the Bible or you don't. I don't care if you're a Jew, a Muslim, a Buddhist, an atheist, a Wiccan. None of that's important. That is as irrelevant as the substance that brought you through the door. What's important is that you believe that there is a power greater than you that loves you and wants to help you. That's it. That's the whole requirement right there. In the beginning, many of us turn to the group or the love we encounter in Narcotics Anonymous as our higher power. An NA group is a powerful example of a power greater than ourselves at work. Often in desperation, we enter a room full of addicts who share their experience, strength, and hope with us. As we listen, we know with certainty that they have felt the hopelessness and remorse from which we too have suffered. As we observe other addicts practicing a new way of life without the use of drugs, we may come to believe that we too can recover. If they could do it, I could do it, you could do it. Watching other addicts stay clean is compelling proof of the existence of a power greater than ourselves. We notice the acceptance that recovering addicts show each other. We watch as addicts celebrate lengths of clean time that we think will be impossible for us to attain. Perhaps someone hugs us and tells us to keep coming back. Members give us their phone numbers. We feel the power of the group, and this helps us start to heal. The power of the group. That group of druggies, with their experience, strength, and hope, that has found a way to live happy, joyous, and free without drugs and alcohol, I promise you that group is a power greater than you as an individual. That is a higher power. Many of us use spiritual principles as a power greater than ourselves. Spiritual principles, live by them. Faith, hope, honesty, perseverance, brotherly love, service, spirituality, diligence, integrity. These spiritual principles are higher powers. They put you into a higher frequency. We came to believe that by practicing these principles in our lives, we can be restored to sanity. This makes sense to us because we have tried many times to think ourselves into a better way of life. We usually had good intentions, but our day-to-day existence rarely measured up to those intentions. Trying it the other way, practicing a better way of life by living according to spiritual principles, will eventually have an effect on our thinking. You can act your way into better thinking. You cannot think your way into better acting. It is not necessary that we define for ourselves the entire concept of a power greater than ourselves. Those of us with many years of recovery find that our understanding of a higher power changes over time. Our belief grows, as does our faith. We come to believe in a power which can help us far more than we originally thought. As we search for understanding of a higher power, we can talk with our sponsor and other recovering addicts. We may ask them what their idea of a higher power is and how they have arrived at it. This may open our minds to possibilities we hadn't considered before. While it is useful to question others about their spiritual beliefs, we must remember that our understanding of a power greater than ourselves is up to each individual. Others can help us. We may even adopt the ideas of someone else for a while or just believe that they believe. Do you believe that I believe? Because that's good enough to get started. That's that crack in the door that you need. Eventually, however, we need to come to believe for ourselves. The need for our own sense of spirituality is too vital to our recovery for us to neglect this highly personal process. Vital means necessary for living. For us, part of the process of coming to believe is accepting the evidence we see. Our addiction caused us to deny the truth that we saw. But now in recovery, we can believe what we see. At first, we open our minds to try something new, somehow believing that what we try might work. After we take a few small steps toward belief and trust and see results, we become willing to take bigger steps. We find that we are no longer acting as if we believe. Our belief is now reinforced with our own personal experience, some of which is unexplainable. We sometimes encounter remarkable coincidences in our lives that have no rational explanation. We don't need to explain or analyze these occurrences. We can simply accept that they happen and be grateful for them. The longer we stay clean, the more evident it becomes that our addiction goes much deeper than the drugs we used. Much of our problem seems to center in our search for something to make us feel whole. It is a tremendous struggle to stop relying on our own reasoning and ask for help, especially given the self-centered nature of our disease. However, we are becoming open-minded and realizing that we don't have all the answers. We begin to find some humility. We may not grasp the full impact of what being humble means, but our open-mindedness assures us that we have found and have begun to demonstrate this valuable quality. I just want to throw in here, humility simply means being right-sized. You're not the queen of the universe, nor are you a lowly piece of crap. You're not. We're all in the middle of that somewhere. Humility is knowing who you are. You're not the greatest. You also don't suck. Our humility and open-mindedness make us teachable. We allow others to share what has worked for them. This takes humility, for we must let go of our fears about how we may appear to others. Some of the strongest suggestions we may receive from other addicts are to attend meetings, ask for help, pray, and work the steps. Our experience has shown us that belief in a higher power leads us toward recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. People tend to live what they believe, and our newfound belief calls on us to live the program. No matter what we choose for our personal higher power, we've come to believe that NA works. How does it work? Who cares? It matters that it works. We live what we believe by continuing on our path of recovery and working the 12 steps to the best of our ability. Even after years clean, when we have been working a program of recovery and seeking change, we may at times experience periods when life seems meaningless. We may experience a sense of alienation too painful to ignore. At such times, we may find ourselves moving away from sanity, not toward it. We may begin to question our commitment to recovery. We can become obsessed with self-destructive thoughts. we may feel an urge to fall back on what seems easier, the familiar ways of our addiction. During these times, we need to renew our commitment to recovery. We trust that we are undergoing a fundamental transformation, even though we may not yet understand its full implication for our lives. As painful as it seems, we must change. If we trust that there is growth despite the pain, we can walk through these difficult periods more readily. During these times, relying on the second step provides us with hope and reminds us that we are not alone. If things don't feel right, we take time to think and seek suggestions from our sponsor. We trust that with help from other recovering addicts and a power greater than ourselves, we can be restored to sanity in all areas of our lives. Remember, drugs and alcohol are not the problem. They're the wrong solution to your actual problems. We draw upon what we have learned from going to meetings and following directions. We accept that life on life's terms may not always be to our liking or, more importantly, to our understanding. Sanity often means that we don't act on our first impulse. Your first impulse, your first inclination, your desire to chase that car down and snatch somebody out of the driver's seat because they didn't use their turn signal, that's not going to be the right decision, okay? So first thought wrong. Whatever your first thought is, take that captive and have another 2-3 thoughts past that before you actually take an action. Pause during agitation. These are some of the wisest words ever spoken to me. We begin to make choices that help us rather than harm us. What worked for us in the beginning remains applicable, no matter how many years we have been clean. Once again, we reapply ourselves to the basics of this program. Going to meetings, reaching out for help, and working the steps. Although we may feel despair, there is hope. A power greater than ourselves is always available to us. Along with the hope we derive from working step 2, we find that our way of thinking is undergoing a radical change. The whole world looks different. Where before we had no reason to hope, we now have every reason to expect a dramatic difference in our lives. By being open-minded, we've opened ourselves to new ideas. We've stepped away from the problem and toward a spiritual solution. This solution is evidenced by our open-mindedness and our willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves. We must now go on to step 3 to develop a relationship with the God of our understanding. Now, right next to where it says the whole world looks different, before we had no reason to hope, we now have every reason to expect a dramatic difference in our lives. I have a note here that says beautiful eyes. So I'm going to tell you a little story. You want to hear a story? Here's a story. So back when I was in prison, we would have some Buddhists come in twice a week, and I would go to the service, which was basically yoga and some teaching. I wouldn't call it preaching. It's different than what you would think of in a Christian church. But anyway, there was a young lady in there, and English was not her first language. She was describing how after implementing Buddhism into her life and meditating, that she was starting to see things differently. And she meant to say that even being in prison, she had this new hopeful outlook on life because the way that she approached things in life had changed because she had changed. But because English was not her first language, what she said was that she saw things through beautiful eyes. Her eyes had changed. I just thought that was the coolest thing I had heard. That always stuck with me. Her saying, I see things through beautiful eyes. I just will share that with you. So let's talk about belief, because this trips people up. Okay? Belief is not an emotion. Belief is not confidence. Belief is not knowing. Belief is behavior. In recovery, belief means I show up, I listen, I try suggestions, I act as if change is possible before I feel convinced. Feelings usually show up later. You don't wait to feel ready. You act, and the readiness is built through experience. If you wait until you feel like believing, that demon's going to win. Now, sanity in NA doesn't mean perfect mental health. Sanity means not doing the thing that keeps destroying your life. Sanity is the return of choices. Because what do I always tell you? Addiction's a demon disguised as a disease that takes away your power of choice. So if you are restored to sanity, you're no longer the demon's puppet, and he makes all your decisions and choices for you. Now you've got your choices back. So step 2 is where we begin to allow this help to enter our lives. I'm going to read you some journal prompts. Where have I seen even the smallest evidence that recovery might be possible for me? All right, where have you seen this? Have you seen this in other people? Have you seen this in your own life? Was there something that you've read in the literature that made you just go, yes, that could be me? Here's another. What beliefs about myself, God, or change have been blocking me? What are your limiting beliefs? What do you believe about yourself that makes you think you can't recover? What do you believe about God that makes you think you can't recover? What do you think about change? Is it scary? You're not good enough? I will tell you this. Change does not happen in a comfort zone. If you're comfortable and everything's great, why would you change? Change only comes because we experience some kind of pain or consequence that makes us say, this is not working for me. Otherwise, you would just keep doing what you're doing. Just for 24 hours. What would it look like in your life to be willing? Now, what would you lose if you stayed closed-minded? What might you gain if you stay open-minded? So those are some things to journal about, just for yourself or share with your sponsor. Now, I've also got some questions. I'm going to call these sponsor home group questions. Ask other recovered addicts who are living happy, joyous, and free, who are living the program. Don't ask the newcomer that's only got 4 days and no sponsor. What does a power greater than myself mean to you right now? Not what you think it should mean, but what does it mean right now? What am I still trying to control that is clearly not working? What does belief as action look like in my daily behavior? How am I practicing open-mindedness this week? What am I doing to practice open-mindedness? Now, if anything in this hits you today, don't just sit with it. Take one action. Call somebody. Go to a meeting. Open the book. Say, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. That's how step 2 starts working. Not with certainty, but with willingness. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need it. Drop in the comments, what does step 2 mean to you right now? I love y'all. Love everybody. Let God sort them out. Keep coming back. I'm going to keep coming back. See you in the next one.